Guys, I have a problem. I'm one of those people who has an easier time coming up with ideas than completing them, which is why there's a folder on my computer with a couple hundred half-finished top 10 lists I fear I'm never going to get back to. To say this folder haunts me may be a bit melodramatic, but there's certainly a tinge of pain every time I look at it. I think it's clear. Something needs to change. As far as I'm concerned, I have two options. I could either spend the time finishing these lists and then share them with the world, or I could continue to let them collect dust. But what if there was another option? Maybe, just maybe, the solution is somewhere in the middle. Let me introduce you to Incompleted, the show where I turn half-finished articles into a few minutes of entertainment. Together, we're gonna clean out these terrible folders and bring order back to my life. Let's do this.
Hi there, friends. It's Jeffrey. When you come to Toys R Us, you can meet
a Pepsi. Sure thing, Curly.
Sorry, Noy.
Did you know that Holy Diver is finally getting released outside of Japan? In case you aren't well versed in 30-year-old Castlevania clones, Holy Diver was a side-scrolling action game inspired by heavy metal music of the 1970s and 80s. It had references to Ozzy, Dio, Slayer, King Crimson, and more, along with a crazy story that talked about the devil and used religious imagery. And many believe that this is one of the reasons that Nintendo denied Irem's attempt to bring Holy Diver to the United States. To honor the upcoming limited edition physical cartridge from Retrobit, I wanted to create a list of the greatest games named after songs. Unfortunately, this proved to be a lot harder than anticipated. I knew that Holy Diver would make the list, but what else? The only other one I could come up with that was any good was Power Slave by Lobotomy Software, which of course was named after an Iron Maiden album and song. I hit a wall after writing down Holy Diver and Power Slave. The problem I ran into is that most of the games that were named after songs were either bad or on foreign computers I never owned. I'm talking about games like A Ticket to Ride, A Day in the Life, and Werewolves in London, all released on the ZX Spectrum. There was a Yellow Submarine game on the MSX, and Windows had both Material Girl and Under Pressure. This is all interesting information, but these aren't great games that deserve to be mentioned alongside Holy Diver and Power Slave. Instead of trying to force a list of mostly bad games, I've decided to let it be.
Homer's hiding on that hill.
The rope walker, radar station, anti-aircraft.
So, what level can you get to?
Every so often, I'll get the notion that I need to be angrier and complain more. When that happens, I usually jot down a bunch of pet peeves, thinking that I'll eventually get to the point where I become an old curmudgeon that gets upset about everything. But I don't think that's what I'm cut out for, because a lot of my pet peeves are pretty stupid. Like, for example, it annoys me that Super Smash TV added the word super on the box, but it's just regular old Smash TV everywhere else. I also don't like when games continue to run up the clock when you're paused. I mean, I stopped the game for a reason, so quit nagging me about the time. When I beat a game and it tells me how long it took me, I want to see my actual play time and not some inflated time that adds all of those hours I left the game running when I did something else. Another one of my pet peeves is how BC Racers on the Sega CD doesn't have a logo on the side. I don't know, perhaps there are other games like this, but this is the only Sega CD game I've ever seen that's just blank on the spine. What's that about? And on that note, why hasn't anybody rebooted the Chuck Rock franchise? They released a couple popular games and even a kart racer, and then just kinda disappeared. Somebody should bring that back.
The cassette radio, which actually plays music.
Thank you, Bob. You can feel the excitement in this crowd, and why not?
As somebody who reads a lot of reviews, there are quite a few lazy cliches I could go the rest of my life without ever seeing again. At one time, I thought it might be fun to write a whole list of these overused phrases, but never did get around to completing the project. A good example of one of these expressions is when critics say, "I played this game so you don't have to." I mean, I get it, bad games can be hard to play at times, but come on, let's not act like this is a tough job. Another cliche I hate is when people say, "This game is for people who like to have fun." Yeah, it's a game, and most games are designed to be fun. Even when it's a dark and dramatic game, it's still supposed to be fun. When people say something like, "for people who like to have fun," what they really mean is that it's lighthearted and for people not looking to be challenged by the story. Now, here's one I'm sure I've said in the past. Fans of the movie may like it, but everybody else should steer clear of this game. While it's certainly true that there are die-hard fans of some movies and TV shows that'll be happy with pretty much anything, most gamers are able to tell the difference between a good and bad game, even if they like the source material. let's not treat these fans like they're different from us, because we all deserve quality entertainment, not half-ass pandering.
Is there a mechanic in the house?
But for that, you've got to beat Mike Tyson.
There was a time when I wanted to highlight my favorite continue screens from old arcade games, but like everything else we've talked about today, I didn't get very far. Now, unlike the other list that I brought up today, there's a chance that I may revisit this concept at some point in the future, so maybe you can help me brainstorm some ideas. The catalyst for this came from the arcade version of Ninja Gaiden, which ends with a giant buzzsaw being slowly lowered on Ryu Hayabusa's unprotected chest. As a kid, I found this continue screen to be terrifying. I mean, who wants to see our ninja hero get sawed in half? Really, it's almost a form of manipulation, and part of me is glad that it didn't make the cut when Tecmo made their console games. Now, you're probably way ahead of me on this one, but Final Fight also had a great continue screen. You see either Hagar, Cody, or a guy tied to a chair watching a lit fuse slowly make its way to a stick of dynamite. This is a bad way to go, but at least it's less gruesome than a buzzsaw getting lowered into your stomach, right? I've always enjoyed the animation that goes along with this screen. As far as I'm concerned, more games need these exciting continue screens. Hey, thanks for watching this debut episode of Incompleted. So here's the question I have for you. What's your video gaming pet peeve? I have more that I've written down, but I'll save those for another day. Let me hear your grievances in the comments below. In other news, I'm currently hard at work on next week's content, which should include new episodes of Game Over, The Early Years, and The Shoot 'em Up Show. In the meantime, I strongly recommend you click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here. Until then.